Talking Industry, topical debate from the worlds of automation, manufacturing and engineering. Brought to you by DFA Manufacturing Media.
Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I have the pleasure of chairing this exciting panel session on IIOT, connected networks, 5G and future of communication. So hopefully we've got some very, very enthusiastic panelists today, so I'm going to try and not speak too much and let them take it away. And hopefully you've all got some good questions to ask. I will be coming around with the mic and I'll be trying to get you to ask some good questions to challenge the panelists. So please do your best to do so. I'm not going to introduce them myself. I would like you to introduce yourself as we go along. We'll go in the order on the board. We'll start with Nick, if you don't mind.
Okay, thanks. Good morning. Welcome to day 3 and congratulations for making it this far. It feels like Squid Games, doesn't it? My name's Nick Lewis. I'm VP Marketing of ASOCS. We provide private 5G management software. So, I mean, it's not the 5G that you probably know about, like through O2 or EE. It's a fully private network that's held on premise, usually end to end. We provide the vRAN, or what's called the vRAN, the virtualized RAN, the radio access network, where we manage the connection between the devices to the core and then onto the edge where you do the computation. So to put it in the simple terms, it's if you have a camera and you need to run some AI, we will provide the management software that will enable that camera to link to the network, back to the AI, and then receive the information and send it back to another device, all in real time. Those are the advantages of 5G. I'm sure that there's tons of questions out there, and probably the first one I can tell you is 5G doesn't cause COVID, definitely not private. You don't need to wear any aluminium hats. Like it's a low voltage, low wattage solution that provides a seamless coverage across the plant, indoors and outdoors, all based on a SaaS model. We actually have end-to-end solutions that are available through partners that are end-to-end SaaS. So from the cameras to the virtual edge, all on a subscription base, which means it's easily scalable and easy to enter. I'm happy to answer any questions about 5G and private 5G and how it works. I think it's easier to answer questions than to try and explain the bits and bytes that go into it.
Thank you, Nick. Hopefully, that sparks some ideas in the crowd for some good questions. Ali, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. Morning, everyone. My name is Alejandra Matamoros. I work for the Manufacturing Technology Center, MTC. MTC is one of the 7 high-value manufacturing catapult centers distributed nationally. We were created more than a decade ago now to bridge the valley of death between academia and the manufacturing industry. And each of us as catapult centers, we have certain areas of focus. For the MTC in particular, we work with a wide range of industrial sectors. We traditionally started with aerospace and defense, but we expanded our portfolio to a wide range of sectors, including aerospace and defense, space, construction, infrastructure, food and drinks, agri-food, and a number of others around that. Part of the key offerings from our side is around process development and systems development using manufacturing off-the-shelf technology and closing the gap in between what is the technology that enables that next step, that future capability of equipment. Likewise, we come and we get our suppliers also and partners to bring their equipment as well for testing, proving the concept or proving the capabilities for specific processes and support the process development when using those particular technologies. So we are particularly strong in additive manufacturing, laser technologies and other non-conventional machining technologies, also in automation and robotics, product and process design techniques much more in particular, mechatronics, electronics manufacturing, and quite strong in digital engineering, and hence my presence in here today. Another key area of focus for us is technology transformation. So we don't work on that push element. We by being in that valley of death, as they call it, in the readiness and process of maturation of technologies, we do play in that dynamics of push and pull in terms of introduction of technologies. So part of the things that we do to support industry is to support them in that transformation journey, and that's with large manufacturers, but also with SMEs, and we have particular programs for SMEs to support them through the journey of understanding the value of technology, understanding their requirements around technologies, and how we can then get them through that journey by definition of technology roadmaps. So as for the digital domain in particular, I think one of the thought-provoking things I wanted to mention is that comparison between what's been traditional for those companies that have been able to afford the implementation of communication technologies via requirements driven by Industry 3.0 with automation, or even before those times where we have a significant proportion of our manufacturers still being significantly back in the times and very, very traditionally legacy, where sensing technology is less typical and even less so the implementation of communication technologies. And these two combinations being the contrast that we have with respect to all the power that all these technologies that we have around today are actually offering to enhance those capabilities, where we had typically very vertical communications implemented where they do exist, versus that contrast of having multi-level architectures or multi-level type of technologies enabling different kind of characteristics in between where is the production shop floor and all the layers of the manufacturing businesses up to the enterprise levels, enabling different levels of models of ownerships, model of management, development of new forms of assets beyond the physical assets, which is the data assets, and those interactions that derive from there. So that's where I want to kind of prompt out questions and ideas more on the today and the digitalization of legacy manufacturing, but also in the future looking on the innovation side. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. That's very, very interesting, and a lot of good topics that we can address later on in the discussion. So I've got a few from Nick there with the fear behind the actual, 5G is not COVID, doesn't cause COVID and things like that. So we can address the fear side of connectivity, and then from Alejandra we can go on to talk about legacy equipment and the gap in the skills. So we can address those topics later on. Thank you. Over to you, Steve.
So, hi, Steve Ashton. I'm two hats really. So I've got Worcestershire County Council. You're probably wondering why somebody from a county council is here today, right? So effectively my role there is to drive broadband connectivity forward for the county. That's a county place-based initiative, bringing the right solutions in mobile, broadband, 5G, helping local business to get on the forefront and thinking about 5G. Which moves me to my second point. So we did some very early work. We put the first 5G network into a UK factory at Worcestershire. We helped put WBA into to put the first Wi-Fi 6 network globally into a factory at Metis Aerospace in Redditch. But from that and from our learnings on Worcestershire 5G project, we've set up Nicc Works. Nicc Works is a company offering professional services. You'll notice that 5G isn't in the title, so it's not just about 5G, but primarily it's where our expertise has been based. Private networks, those sorts of services, but we also offer testbed as a service. So we've done that by building a private network at a facility at Malvern Hill Science Park, enabling businesses to come in and test there, whether that be in the production environment or test the end product, or if they were a software-based provider, come into the lab and use your software and see how that performs on the network or over edge compute, and what that looks like for you on our local MEC. The other thing that Nicc Works has done, it's worked with MTC to put a 5G standalone network into the MTC facility, enabling, again, members access to that test bed and facility to come in and trial and build use cases and test those products that are coming new to market. And we've also done some supply into other businesses at the minute, so that's what we've been doing with AE Aerospace in Birmingham. That's been the shape of us. So questions around private network support. We do not sell networks afterwards, so I'm not in the basis of putting a network in place to push to you. It's just that professional steer advice, strategy work, and come and have a trial and a play on the network if you like.
Thanks, Dave. Very interesting as well there. So we can address some of the actual private network side of things and more implementation side again later on. And Francois, from you, please.
So hello everyone. So I'm Francois Dich from Schneider Electric. My role is I'm industrial automation consulting lead for UK and Ireland. So my goal is to go alongside our clients to help them for their digital transformation journey. So Schneider Electric, just to make sure that everyone replaces them. The stand is here. If you don't know the company, we are a global company, 100 plus countries, 136,000 people, and I'm coming here today as actually a consultant to explain not only what Schneider can provide as technical solutions, but as well this consulting help to get along the digital journey. So very much similar to what Ale was speaking a little bit before. We can help clients get away from this pilot purgatory, as we say, like when we're testing things but nothing really gets rolled out on the shop floors. We have done this for ourselves. Schneider has a global supply chain, so globalized supply chain, of 86,000 people working together under the same leadership in the company, and who've gone through a digital transformation journey since 2005. And smart factories have started to be converted on this digital transformation journey since 2017, where we really put a strong drive to get ourselves digitized and connected on increasing performance, efficiency, and sustainability to the next level. We now have more than 100 smart factory and distribution centers across the world. 5 of them have been named Lighthouse by the World Economic Forum. We are the 4th globally on Gartner's top supply chain innovators, like top supply chain leaders. And this is all this wealth of knowledge that includes communication and ways of distributing information and insights, on analyzing those insights and pushing them back across all levels of the organization, that I'm going to, well, I'll be happy to talk about today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Francois. So that was really interesting introductions from you all. And I'm going to kick the questions off in reverse order to those who started the presentations, but please feel free to join in if you've got points to add. You know, I'll address this first one at Nicc, and it was around the idea of what you mentioned with the fear of connectivity and fear this ongoing sort of apprehension to adopt from SMEs and companies, where it might be the fact that, you know, open source architecture is something they're scared of, or, you know, what would you do to eliminate this sort of apprehension to adopt networks like 5G in, you know, SME companies and other companies as well?
So let me start by being a little bit controversial. It's a lot worse in Britain than it is anywhere else. Okay?
Yeah.
The fear is inherent. I don't know what it is, whether it's cultural, whether it's let's wait and see what happens in other countries. But, like, you know, when we look at the deployments we've done elsewhere around the world, the fear's a lot less there. Where the fears come in, there's one on security, where actually private 5G has an advantage, because there's no packet core going out to any public service. Everything's held on premise. The entire network's managed on premise, and even the edge server is on premise. So in that case, like, anything that is going out to the cloud is not real time, not essential, and can be protected through normal cybersecurity. But the main functioning is happening like on premise. The second one is cost, which you know, in some cases is true. Like if you're buying a box solution from one of the larger providers, I'm not going to mention names, but you know, one had an 8110 in the 90s. You basically having to purchase like a large box, you know, and if you want more, you need to purchase another large box and another large box. With the OpenRAN and the ORAN open systems, then you can actually like purchase these on subscription. So you can scale up, you can test, you can actually have a lighthouse project, you know, and see your ROI and get it back. The third one is a fear of change, and that's probably the one that hits home right now the most here. Loss of jobs, changing attitudes, training up new staff, how it's going to work. Again, some of these are, you know, real situations that you need to deal with. I can tell you that most of the deployments, especially the ones in Germany, don't look at changing or reducing staff, but actually like training them up and augmenting their work and making the factory run a lot more efficiently.
That's a good word, augmenting. I like that.
Yeah. The second side of it is, you know, it's going to have to happen. You know, whether you're doing it for health and safety reasons, which is usually the primary, you know, driver to say, I need to do something, even if it's to put cameras up. Or, you know, later on when you're saying, I have to meet my green targets and sustainability, which can only come through better productivity and cleaner, you know, less waste. It's going to come. So the question is like how you do it and how you go across it, you know, and people think about it like as being a huge project that's going to like just eat up everything they do and change their entire universe, and it's really not like that. You know, in most cases, a system integrator will come in and do the architecture for you, and will map, and will source for you, and will find how to do the best way possible. They'll even define, like we do in Germany, where we'll sit down with the factory floor manager and say, where are your pain points? Where is your biggest pain point? And figure out like which technology is right. So, I mean, you know, the first fear we ever got in Germany was, don't touch my red button. You know, we said, we don't want to touch your red button. The red button is yours. Press it whenever you want, it's your red button, okay? We can help you, like make a decision about when to press the red button, or we can do something completely different that's not connected to the red button, but don't worry about that side. You know, and we deployed there, so I mean, it's, you know, there are changes happening. There are deployments like live on factory floors in Taiwan, Germany. We see France starting to pick up a lot of interest. We have in Japan, South Korea. You know, these countries are moving ahead, you know, and have got over the initial fear, and now talking about the real fears, which is like, you know, how can I secure my network? What am I doing with my network? What's the best way to use my network, and how do I see my ROI? And, you know, those are all addressable as well.
Yeah, some very interesting points actually, and I like how you've tied them all in together to link each other. But I think there may be some other comments. I mean, firstly, you mentioned security, the security side of things with private networks. But perhaps one of our other panelists wants to talk about the cloud side of things, or maybe the security on that side.
So I can pick up the conversation here. So I agree. So I don't know if there's some reticence in the UK to implement those kind of technologies, but the example that I have from Schneider to give are from France and from the US, and not necessarily from the UK. So, and what we haven't implemented, I mean, when I'm talking about the 5G related projects, we haven't implemented private networks. We were using the licensed network, and we have you know, two factories which are two of our very advanced smart factories in Le Vaudreuil in France, and in two other in the US, where we would have implemented a 5G network, which allows us to make the most of most of an architecture which is more edgeless. So this is where we are testing the waters. I don't think there's any fear of connected to the workforce, job losses or whatever. It's more about pushing, making the most of the most recent technologies and pushing ahead on new architectures. So we're more headless. This is what we try, and it's to relate as well to something that I talk when we go along the digital journey. Nowadays, please don't go for proof of concepts. Go directly to pilots. The tech is there. Nick, I'm sure you would say the technology is ready from your side of things. From Ale and Ste point of view, it's like you've done it. You've done it for yourselves. Schneider have done it for ourselves. There's no fear to have. It's about having the courage of harnessing these new technologies and just putting them in place.
I'd like to ask a question back. Like, anyone in the audience, have they implemented any kind of automation through connectivity? Not one. Anyone thinking about it? Half.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, you're the only representative here who seems to be less fearful of the future. What were your initial fears? Like where's the jump?
Well, it mainly came from kind of a necessity, really. So the company I work for, we mainly work in diagnostics and fault finding and helping customers fix their problems. And that became a lot more difficult during COVID when you can't really travel and there's a lot of restrictions. So it's this idea of trying to come up with remote monitoring systems for their older machines that don't really have that capability of dial-in or cloud connectivity to do that. So that rather than having to get new machinery or things like that, being able to put something in place that allows them to basically give new functionality to their machine and be able to remotely support them. So kind of a need is sort of what pushed for it rather than a want, I guess, but it sort of becomes both at the end of it. So yeah.
And did you find like the process like painful, like was it, or the initial hump? I'm sure.
I think it rolls back round to fear, basically. So this idea that you've got this system you want to put into place, and it's going to require internet connectivity and things, and a lot of the resistance is trying to get it onto a network where they don't really want to give you access to their network because you're then connecting basically the internet to their machines, and there's the risk there of what could happen and things like that. So
I was going to say, I think a couple of really interesting points that you made there. So the last one then about not getting the information off the networks. We did some work with Yamazaki Mazak, and they used to get far more information. They were plugging into a dial-up connection than they get in other people's networks now. Because one of the challenges when they go in and sell the machines and want to sell the services on top of that is it hits a firewall issue. It hits the IT team. The operational technology team wants to move on with it, but the IT team are thinking, hands up, we're not here. So there is absolutely that's a point, and it can be overcome and addressed, and 5G and the security standards that are within that help that. The other point that you made, which is a really key point as well, is you talked about old machines. So if people are sat back thinking, my machinery is this old, I've got a big investment to make. No, most often than not, like with IoT, you could retrofit. You retrofit those sensors, those pieces onto machines. We did it effectively at Bosch and at Mazak too, and it's not a whole investment in the plant. But if you can start from scratch, that's good. And then up to the security point, we did some work with Kinetic, and Kinetic were looking at network security by design from that stage, but also at the application level. So when you design, you've got to think about security when you're planning that. Well, you don't necessarily do that. Maybe the people you appoint will do that for you. But they think about network design when they do that, and security is inherent in that. And also then thinking about it at the application level, so you ensure you can get that data right.
Thank you. That was really interesting. A good question and answer. I think Alejandra, do you want to touch on that, because you mentioned legacy equipment before?
Yeah. Just to add on that, indeed. Absolutely, everything comes down to the design and to the considerations around where is the infrastructure, how that architecture should look like, how much of an interference that architecture that is based on certain levels of security constraints, if they are, will actually conflict or interfere with your enterprise or more secure type of architectures. Because what What this will allow for is to go as flexible as you can, and with that flexibility goes the design considerations around which are your pain points, how you're going to go about your pain points. Is it actually down to you and your local super constrained enterprise domain to resolve those pain points where condition monitoring, for example, predictive maintenance may not be the kind of services that you have on site to resolve. So how you can segregate those networks and provide an architectural solution that actually works for your pain points and make the case for those specific areas for resolving those more scalable type of applications.
Yeah, that's very interesting and a very good point. Do we have any other questions amongst the audience? Not necessarily around legacy, but any form of question? Sure.
I can ask the question to Steve. The services that you provide at Malvern, we're an app development company. So how do you charge a software company to test our systems and devices and IoT on these different systems?
Again, in many cases, it might be there's a day rate that might be applied depending on how many days there's discounts available in that space. There's also, you could just take that to come and have a go on the network and play yourself if you want to get on with it. Beyond that, if people want professional services attached to that, then we can integrate more and do more. So, as an example, Digital, who do autonomous driving, they'd come through, they'd access the lab to do some of the basic testing between the kit. When they wanted to put that into the car, we said there's an additional charge attached to that, and they were driving the vehicle then remotely from Coventry. I don't know why I pointed to Ellie then, just because MTC's in Coventry. Remotely from Coventry around the Malvern Hills Science Park there to do that. So the different points, but the original conversation is just an exploration effectively, and really go from there, and it depends on what the scale is and what you want to do.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions? Over here for you first.
So we hear a lot about companies that want to go through a digital transformation at the moment. It seems to be a bit of the in thing at the moment for good reason. But as what was discussed earlier, there's a lot of kind of concern about it around security and their existing infrastructure. How does it fare? It'd be good to get an understanding how you would lead a customer through that, the process that they want to actually go through that transformation, how you'd suggest that they actually go through that.
Do you mind if I go first? Sorry.
I'll be fine. Go first, Steve, and I'll come back after that.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is every journey we've been on with our customers who've said we want, some people just wanted to do it because it's new, digital transformation, we want to do this. I mean, in particular, I'm talking about 5G now as an example of that. So they'd set off on that journey. Usually, 5G, so what? Why? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What are your problems? So we start asking the question, and we even go back to the point of what have you explored before with previous generations of technology where it's failed and it's not delivered what you wanted it to, and let's start looking there. It's hard to say identify it from a problem because in some cases there are a lot of assumed truths. So you might get something which says you only ever get 70% utilization of a particular machine. That's known across industry. You're never going to get more than that off a particular product or service, right? You can start to challenge those points, and you can start to say, well, is that true? So we'll usually do that from that set. Why, and what do you need? We'll talk a little bit about saying, look, from a particular technology perspective, I know people don't always want to know what the technology does. They just got to make sure it works. But actually, the appreciation, because the expertise that sits within that business for knowing what it needs to do or what it wants to do, if they can understand the capabilities of the technology that they're deploying just at a basic level, the ideas start to ping. We have never started a project with anybody yet which has finished the way it was intended. Every time people have started it might have delivered that core objective, but it's added 2 or 3 more things, or it's added another slice in, or people have thought about a different angle and a different line of track to take. And that's what I found excited about engaging in that space. So they're usually the ways in which we engage early with a business. Information from them, advice and guidance and steering experience from us as well. And it's the two working together effectively. Budget's a point as well, because you might want to think about the size and the scale and the shape of that. But we find by people looking at a number of things that have, use cases or live environments, as we've said, there are enough people out there now to have confidence in going into your piece and getting what you want from it. And I think, you know, Nick's point about scalability is key there as well. Whilst the big vendor solutions and big plays are great, if you're going to go into it, at least with a scalable solution, you're going into it at an affordable level. It might just be in a part of your factory or on one of your lines, and then you move up from there and you can scale with that, and it's not wasted investment. And very finally, the one point, because it's a bit of a fear, is people think about evolving standards. So people say the capabilities of 5G, as it's been said, aren't all there yet. True, but when you're investing in the hardware. Most of these updates are going to come through software upgrades and software updates. So it's not like you're buying a machine that's then going to be out of use in 5 years' time. It's going to be able to grow with you on that journey for foreseeable, right? For 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. So there's quite a few points that you mentioned, which are really important, and to put them in kind of in a process, and this is what I do day to day, right? So the technology question, right? Is it future proof, and is it working, right? So most of the time, what is future proof is the new technologies didn't have the 20 years of being run to find out to make it mainstream, of course, since they are new. So there is as well another element that you've mentioned, which is the confidence and the support that you would get to get this transformation going. So there are two very related issues actually that are part of the digital transformation journey. And they all boil down to having governance, which is organized in a way to give the people who are going to implement those solutions, well, first pilot them and then roll them out inside the organization, so that those people need to have the keys of the transformation, right? There's a money thing, and there's as well an organization side. If those two elements are not meeting in any digital journey, then you will get stuck in the pilot purgatory. Organization leaders need to embrace the transformation and give the keys of the transformation to their teams, right? And this is where you can go private in the private sector with Schneider helping alongside the digital journey. More private partnership, private-public partnership, like Ale would suggest. But this is definitely something to put in place, so that you have then the remit to change the way things work as deep as the communication layer in your process technologies.
Sorry, I was going to say, Francois, to that point, absolutely, you know, and engaging at every level, the really thing that's important. You're enjoying at the C-suite level, absolutely. Getting with those change managers, your lean practitioners, your Sigma 6 champions, Black Masters, whatever that level is, and also at the front line as well, because you can allay some fears, you can deal with and manage those. You've got to work across an organisation, and it's the other thing that's important. It doesn't sit in your IT department, it sits in your organisational, it sits in your OT piece, right? Operational technology, not just IT. IT have got a bit of that, but.
Absolutely. Just to add to that, as Francois is alluding to, part of the work that we do is, we have different type of customers, don't we? So we have the SME type of support that is required in a completely different way that the large international manufacturing will require, where they do have a much more of a strategic business capability to actually go about identifying their requirements and identifying what is the journey that they want to go about. But when it comes to SMEs, I'm not particularly from that area, but as close as I've been to our activities around that, one of the first things that we do, is, as Ste was referring to, is understanding their challenges. So start with where are those challenges, where are the requirements, so go and do the line works, understand where they are. There is part of the offering that comes from that government leg that we have is around identifying the digital readiness of the business, where those different dimensions that Francois and Stey are mentioning are most. So the dimensions around business, the organizational aspect, the business aspects of the organization, the operational aspects, the people aspect and skills, and the technology per se. So once you go about that understanding of that readiness, and where are the goals, the strategic goals for them from the business perspective, from the operational perspective, from the people's perspective as well, that's where you start developing that journey and projecting that roadmap of activities that are required for getting them through that journey. Then when we think about large manufacturers, where they come with more specific requirements, more specific interests around technologies, which are not only around plugging in sensors in the manufacturing environment and trying to understand those parameters that are coming out from the machines, but perhaps they come much more with a requirement of enhancing their workers with augmented reality or more other type of smart devices to support the management of the manual operations or the combination of manual and automated operations. That's a different domain, and that's where we start perhaps much more in that proof of concept stage before we enter into a piloting and scale up stage. So it significantly varies, and it significantly varies with respect to the capacity for investment as well.
I think you asked such a key question that everyone wants to answer it, because it's like the question. So I'm going to jump in as well. Generally, what we do is we take a workshop with the company that we're gonna deploy to, and in particular the people on the floor, because they're the people who've got the pain points. There are three major buckets of digitalization that can happen. One is around imaging, so that's using connected cameras. Cameras don't have to be 5G ready, they can be Wi-Fi ready, or they can be cable ready, and they can be converted with a CPE, which is a small, in some cases just a dongle with a SIM card inside, and it becomes 5G ready. So that's not an issue. The second one is around mobility, so that's talking about AGVs, drones, location services which can happen inside. So if you want to know where a particular tool is, where a particular piece of machinery is, where a particular piece of inventory is, that can go around through there, and then seamless coverage from zone to zone. And the third way is through data, which is all the data that you're receiving from the sensors and everything that's going around it. Including making a digital twin, which can then feed out into the augmented reality. These things are actually happening today, by the way. You know, a complete digital twin of a piece of machinery, and an engineer with a pair of AR goggles being able to fix that piece of machinery with expert advice in being connected in real time. But let's talk about like the starting point. Basically, the starting point is usually around the imaging. That's what we find, like based on around 80% of the RFIs that we get at the end of the day. And usually around health and safety, that's the first step. Make a lighthouse project, which is like, this is the investment that's going to come in, this is the ROI I want to see out the back of it. Really important to see that there is a target, like where I'm going to make my money back. And then we sit down and we discuss the problems and what's going to be the first project. And we've had some really interesting discussions. So I'll give you an example. We sat down with one company and they said, we want, for health and safety reasons, a camera that's above our waste disposal, like our waste area, to monitor people who are walking through the area, make sure there's not too many people walking through, and that anyone who's there has a helmet on, and that there's no gases leaking from anywhere or some kind of like leakage. And all we have is a camera. It's fine, it's an 8K camera. What other problems do you have? Well, you know, like we have one guy who, by taking a look at the amount of waste that there is there, knows how much it weighs, and based on that, we can kind of like calculate whether our line is productive or not productive, or if we need to buy more materials, or we don't need to buy more materials, and also like possibly like we can have a look and see like what kind of like mix of the materials there are there. We said, no problem. We brought in an AI company with us. They took the same imaging. The imaging is now running on health and safety, exactly how they want it. It's also doing a calculation on the quantity of waste, the weight of the waste, and the type of waste based on the glistening of the material that's coming off the camera. So it's about taking a small step first, and then asking the questions and seeing how much you can do, and then where you want to go from there. You know, the biggest deployments we have, like, are running an entire factory that all connected and automated, and you know, running through with everything you can think of, you know, like the most futuristic ideas happening today. But usually it's like the smaller steps, the incremental steps. Once you're in, like once you put in, the camera's already there. The radio unit is usually an OpenRAN radio unit. It's there. It's going to cover that area. You can attach 30 devices to the same radio if you need to. Usually 6 to 8 is more than enough for one area. Add more units. It's not like Wi-Fi where you're adding different zones. When you add radio units for 5G, you're extending the zone. So then you're getting the seamless coverage as well. So it's an investment into the future because all of it is software-based. 5G is a software. It's no longer, you know, cables. It's not LTE. It's not 3G. It's software. It's 100% software. The updates are happening automatically through the system. They're happening through the core, happening through the applications. It's a shame the guy who's here, like who develops apps, is gone. But you know, even the apps are being developed, and you know, as they're being updated, they're going straight through to the edge, and you know, being updated automatically. So it is future-proof.
I hope that was a comprehensive answer to your question, which clearly the panelists were really passionate about. So thank you for that question, and thank you all for your answers. To sort of summarize, you know, yours mentioned considering the broader business impacts of these technologies, and you didn't just mention, what I liked was you didn't just mention those on the board that we're meant to be talking about. You mentioned some wider technologies that encompassed digital transformation as a whole, and you know, some of these ideas of how to apply them or how to get started on your journey, you can apply to all of them, you know, not just particular areas. So that was quite good. Do we have any other questions?
Hi. This is a bit off the wall, I suppose. I'm sitting here thinking, what might I want if I was in the position of starting to look at a 5G network and a smart implementation. And you've all got really good expertise, but you're all coming at it from slightly different angles, which of course is fine. But how I would love to get everybody's input, and perhaps there are some others out there that would provide valuable input as well, nationally, internationally, you know, and here we are in, you know, global Britain cowering under the fear of change. How do we bring all this together? Because it seems a little bit fragmented. You know, there's a lot of different, very valuable contributions, but how do you bring it all together? Or is it already happening and I just simply don't know about it?
I think when we look at our ecosystem, we see like a complete picture. So I mean, we usually see an SI, like a system integrator, sitting at the center. You know, they're already, you know, working with the factories that they have. They have the strategy. The strategy is coming through from the manufacturers themselves of where they want to be, some kind of long-term vision. And I think everyone's speaking about this long-term vision and how they want to get there. And then it's about building the project plan that goes with it. I think Francois does something very similar about like building that consultancy into that vision. You know, getting the government funding and you know, being able to test. I think everyone on the panel is part of the journey, and it depends where you're picking up on the journey as to which person you're speaking to at any one particular time. I think that's probably the best way of explaining it.
So there's no one case fits all, right? So the theory is think big, right? Get your vision in. Start small, try and pilot, and then scale up. So not everybody is in the same maturity on the Industry 4.0 kind of maturity level, let's say. We would, it's an art to get into a company and then pick up where things are and give a new momentum when. Well, we usually get approached when things are starting to stall, and there are questions about how we can drive more adoption. What's wrong? What is it? Is it adoption from the workforce? Is it funding, lack of funding, too much risk felt by the management, not enough growth to sustain this the funding of the incorporation of new technologies? It's all things that I've heard across clients. So there's no one size fits all, right? More and more people, though, more and more organizations, sorry, are quite have a strategy of some sort for this digital transformation journey, right? They're not in all the same place, but they do understand that there's something to do. So this is where we pick it up. This is where we talk about it and then pick it when they left it off.
Yeah, and I think there is no doubt 5G is an enabling technology, and it's now in that landscape that allows for actually projecting different things within that transformation journey. So the power is there, and the power for transforming not only the way that technology can be implemented in a manufacturing business, but also how new forms of collaboration across the supply chain can actually be empowered. And the other key point is the technology is there, the technology is ready to start being used, even if that's at smaller steps, perhaps not so ready for automation perhaps, but it's ready for a number of applications, a number of use cases that can start being seen at different levels of scale.
Yeah, and I think people, we talked about a journey, and journeys very often are what people talk about. It's a never-ending journey, by the way. You go through the cycle and you repeat the other end, because progression doesn't stop, right? And our demand to progress doesn't stop, whatever industry you're in. I think the smart connected ecosystem are well connected across the piece. I think there's a lot of existing technologies. We talk about network of networks, right? And it isn't one network; it's a combination of networks that's going to deliver. I think we saw from the lack of hands that, from an industry perspective, you were still trendsetters. There are people on the way, but you're still early adopters in that space, which I think is which is a good place to be. I also think that the other thing that we've been seeing, because Ali made the point earlier about the small manufacturers, SMEs, and then the larger tier 1 type manufacturers as well, or producers. There's a supply chain point within that, and you don't want to be in a position of having to comply with something. You want to be in a position of being exploratory, having a formulated opinion, having a formulated strategy for where you're going to go next, before your customer says to you, by the way, we like what that supply chain's doing on that side. We like the amount of data we're getting from them. We like the quality of information about energy efficiency that's coming through their piece. We like the quality control points. We like tracking where it's come from and where it's landed and when it got here and how long it's been sat in storage, or whatever the information is that sits behind that. We want that from your end of the supply chain too. And if you've got a single customer or 2 or 3 main customers, as they start to demand that need, it's that supply chain point, isn't it? It's of that control. And even then in the mid-range, when you've got suppliers of suppliers, how you can start to shape and control that. There might be some joint investment points there, right? Because who's getting the benefit? But I think that business case development of across the supply chain and then across the different industries is key. There are a number now, you don't have to just go with your mobile network operator, telecommunications provider to do this, okay? So there's licenses that are available, shared licenses, local license spectrum, those kind of things, which means you don't have to just go to the traditional telco company. So we talked about this journey. Journeys are always made better by great company, right? They're always exciting journeys that are the best journeys, always the most tribulous ones which give you the best story and the best outcome, but it's about who you go on that journey with. And the important, I'm not trying to push towards a Nicc type solution or a Francois type solution or what we do, but it's really important that what you go into, you've got your eyes open as to what the potential pathways are. With SIs, systems integrators, that's quite open. With a telco or one of those other solutions, you might find yourself locked down to a particular solution. The same with the hyperscalers who are producing the core pieces there. They can grow with you, but you've really got to think about who you're getting into bed with, who you're working with on that journey. And you can abort it, don't worry. The people have done that too, but it's just something to think about early doors, I think.
I just want to add, just on this technical note, there's 2 ways of getting a 5G network. You can either get an NSA, which is a non-standalone network slice of a public operator. Essentially, you're getting a piece of their network, and they pretty much own the way that you get that network. And there is a risk that you're going to lose some of your traffic is going to go through some kind of public service. The second way is a standalone SA, and actually here Britain was one of the leaders. Like they actually allocated private spectrum, one of the first countries to do so in Europe. a private spectrum, a private allocation means that a factory that puts in a standalone network, 5G network, owns that part of the network. It is yours. That is your bandwidth. No one can use it. No one can walk in with a cell phone and start like speaking on the phone on your network. No one can sit there and watch Netflix and suddenly your cameras don't work. It is your network. In fact, you provide the network. You tell which devices are allowed to get on the on that network, and what kind of qualities you give that device. So, for example, if you have a camera, you can say, I want the camera, because it's in a specific area, I want it to be on a tier 1. And because it's a camera, it doesn't need to download anything. It just needs to upload images the whole time. So I can switch that ratio around. So it's not like when I say I have 100 megabytes of data in my house. No, I have 100 megabytes at best on download and 10 on upload. You actually can switch that around and say, no, I want my camera to work in another way. And the same, you know, on the other side where you need to download the information. So I mean, you know, going on a private level, you know, I'm a little bit more passionate about this than others, but you know, I would say it's a lot more sensible, like going forward when you're thinking about like where you want to go.
Thank you. Some good answers there. I wanted to throw another question to you all actually towards the end, and it's a bit of an external and a personal choice. I'm from a trade association. We've got about 200 member companies, and ongoing discussions are always about building resilience to external shocks. So we've had the pandemic, got Brexit, got current war going on. How would you say that, you know, industrial networks, 5G, IIoT help businesses build resilience? What ways would you tell them that these are the benefits of these networks and how they can help businesses build resilience to external shocks?
Well, I don't mind going first again, but you know, I'm kind of like hogging the place here at the moment. But we believe that you know, a few years ago, the way that mobile networks went, they either went like down the route of the telcos, or they went into what's called ORAN, which is OpenRAN, which is a set of protocols that allows interoperability. Yeah, I hate saying that word. Basically what it means is that you can connect anything to anything, like as long as you use the same protocols. It's a very, you know, technical set of documents that's constantly updated. Outside the pandemic, incidentally, we did a full deployment of a network during the pandemic in Taiwan from our offices in Israel. No one got on an airplane, not one person. So I mean that's one shock that we put behind us. But the second one, the one that's key, what's happening today? There's a supply chain issue. Okay, the biggest supply chain issue, like, you know, can be from your raw materials, but it comes down to like anything that's got a chip in it, like, is now has an issue. Being open and having an open set of protocols means that if you need 30 radio units for your factory, for example, you don't have to get them from the same operator. You don't have to wait 16 months until you can get those. You can actually say, I'll take 10 from this, 10 from that, and 10 from that, and they're all available and off the shelf, and they arrive to you. So I think having that openness and, you know, being able to like be like that is really important. The second stage is like we do a lot of work, like for example with VMware and Microsoft. We can deploy, or you can deploy, our network management system from the Azure cloud, like any other app. You can download your apps that are going to run on your AI through the Azure cloud, and I think that's like future-proofing, like the way things are going forward as well. So, you know, you'll always be up to date. You'll always have the latest software, and it's, you know, always accessible to you. You know, it's just available like it would be any other app you could think about.
So to pick up on this, on the exposure of the openness, you talk about the openness and the fact that having the hardware or open protocol that is kind of easy to source because it's based on an open standard is easier to manage. So what I wanted to talk about is the how you manage your the VLAN, the virtual LANs across your organization. drive the exposure of your actually network or virtual network. So we're talking now touching cybersecurity. So the danger is proportional to your surface of exposure, and this is how wide your network is and how many entry points you have across the network. So this is to be related to why you're doing this. What is it that requires your network to be made available to various places in your organization? Why would you provide this data to the people in the organization? So there's just very recently there's been an innovation by Schneider Electric about machine learning for supply chain optimization, about lead times, about stock levels, replenishment frequency, getting about the type of transport as well to get from the suppliers. It's very topical to all the supply chain disruptions which have been like we've been in the middle of for the last 2 years. And the strength of such a solution comes from the fact that data is made available through communication channels and virtual networks and applications throughout the organization, so that machine learning can tell you as well what you don't know. And there is a mix to find, a balance to find between how much exposure you want to give to your network versus how much data you want to make available to the various levels of your organization, and on how rich you want the insights to be based on this variety of sources.
I'll take that so directly from the application perspective, and we have experienced that in different ways, that the remote working is a thing that is possible. From the production perspective, part of the things that we saw much more quickly emerging, it was happening already pre-pandemic, but it got much more accelerated. It was digital tools for remote support, for remote collaboration, concurrent engineering. We have seen stories about businesses that enter into that diversification of their markets and created different types of partnerships. And the product introduction, product and process development and introduction was heavily supported by digital technologies, with remote experts supporting remotely operators in the manufacturing environments, and monitoring remotely performance of the operations to actually provide that quick introduction to the processes. So all the enablement that comes through the communication channels beyond the manufacturing environment, that's already visible in terms of the tools providing those mechanisms. Whether it's 5G, whether it's still not yet the 5G, because of the reasons that we have been discussing today, but there's no reason really for not actually getting into the journey and projecting that in a different level.
I think obviously resilience can have a couple of meanings. If you're thinking about it from a reliability in your factory point of view, 5G is talking about 5 nines, 99.999% of reliability levels. Okay, someone even asked me about 6 nines the other day, and I was thinking, power's not even at 6 nines in the majority of places across the globe, and certainly in rural areas if you've got a factory operating in those spaces within the UK. But beyond that, no matter what the technology you're using, the private 4G network, the private 5G network, the IoT piece on the edge of the 5G network potentially, which we talked about how all these networks integrate together and you synchronize them. But we talked about private 5G a lot here, and we mentioned about the public 5G as well, or public services, public LTE networks. There's things that you may be doing out in the field with if you've got service engineers out looking. We've mainly focused on the production line, right, and the production within that environment. We also got to think about what your products are doing out in that real world from a resilience point of view. How are you remote monitoring those products? What technologies can you use to do that? Does that help you put new models of service engineering in there to be able to work with that. We did some great work with Yamazaki Mazak around what they did with their machines and getting the right person out at the right time. That was really about delivering customer benefits more than anything else, and customer improvement. But it also saved, from an energy perspective, was saving them money. They're able to identify it that way. But think of the network really as just an enabling tool. Some people may disagree. Think of the network in that sense as an enabling tool. It's something in there that enables you to put other platforms on top of it, other new models on top of it, and to me that's far more exciting than the network part of it, because that's boring, right? That just has to be functional and work for you and do what you need it to. It's what you do on top of that which brings that real resilience, and that's where the great minds, around this hall and elsewhere are gonna have the ideas.
Yeah, it's a means to an end, right? So the end is operational efficiency, right? Optimizing the productivity, optimizing the efficiency of your plants. Then the how, then we need to surround ourselves with experts which are going to tell you what is the best way of achieving this goal, right? If it's a camera and image recognition, right? You would go for high bandwidth, high reliability to get your loops in, and this is what Nick was talking just before, right? It's a means to an end. It's not an end indeed.
Yeah, that's a nice way to sort of begin the summary. I think we're running out of time here. So, you can see the passion that our panelists have for the topic, and they've made some really good points. So I think just to summarize in the last, couple of 5-10 seconds each, go through a final summary of any point you'd like to express to the audience today.
Yeah, so it's not an easy feat to get on that journey, on make the decisions related to communication network, on where the technology is going. So you don't have to build this competency internally, but at some point you need to make the cut. So you need to surround yourself with the right partners, and this is called an ecosystem. So definitely the right decisions are made by clashing heads. So I would definitely engage into building the right ecosystem around you.
I want to close by making mention that there are greatest opportunities there. There are greatest evidences there from the digital manufacturing perspective, heavily enabled by communications, as we know it, and they do believe in product and process development opportunities, smart and flexible manufacturing actually happening, and in service support and integrated supply networks, which is where we're seeing that richness around resilience and diversification and all the growth that we have been briefly discussing about.
I think what I'd say is, rather than trying to summarise something, just signpost you somewhere. So UK 5G has got a fairly broad range of across numerous sectors in terms of what's been happening in trials and test beds and what people have been playing with and what people have learned. Because they've been taking government money alongside their own investment, they're bound to share that information. So all that information is going to be available for you through a whole number of reports there. Have a look, see what's of interest. Have a look at Nicc works effectively as well in terms of some of the things that we've found and shared that way. It's a really good way to maybe start that base level if that's where you are, or narrow down on what you might want to focus on if that's where you are in your kind of adoption phase as well.
I mean, like sitting here considering like how I'm going to sum this up, but maybe I'll tell a story. Like let's imagine this factory, okay? And this factory has cameras pointing down at the production floor, and it has these automated robots that are running the factory line, and it has people walking across, and the camera's monitoring to make sure everyone's wearing the correct safety and health and safety equipment, and it's also monitoring, the same cameras is monitoring how much inventory there is for the robots on the line. It can detect that the inventory is running low for a certain point in the line. It sends a message to an AGV. An AGV then runs to the warehouse without the use of a copper wire through the floor. It already knows, because there's a complete digital twin of the inventory and where it sits and what the RFID is and where it needs to take the piece of machinery, the piece of inventory from, where to get it from, without having to get a single instruction, delivers it back. At the same point, the same cameras are now looking to see if there's any faults or issues with the machines, and the machines themselves are giving diagnostics back to the network. A machine gives a fault reading. That fault reading is then given to an engineer. The engineer is told where to find the tool in the factory to fix that particular problem. And with a set of AR goggles, then goes to the machine and fixes it immediately. Science fiction? Fact. This is a deployment happening right now in Germany. Okay? Exactly as I described it. And this is what the future is going to happen. The future is happening, and it's going to happen here as well. I know it seems like a long way off, and it's hard to imagine where it's going to happen and where it's going to start, you know, and who's going to be the first. But you know, Britain has a proud manufacturing network basis. You know, it has a history. It has a history of going forward. It also has a history of once it's made up its mind, they're going to push ahead, and probably faster than any other country adopts. So the adoption rate might be a little bit slower, but when it happens, it will happen. And I believe the beginnings are starting to happen now. And then the question happens on what kind of connectivity you need to base your next level on. And there you need to make your own decisions. I mean, I have my recommendations. I'm happy to talk about them to anyone else. But you know, I think the first step is to understand what you need and where you want to go and where your starting point is. And make sure it's a realistic starting point and somewhere that everywhere from the factory floor up to the board level can understand and buy in.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all very much for your expertise. I'm sure lots of value was added to the audience, so thank you all very, very much. And thank the audience as well for participating today. And
Thank
you can
you.
catch up with all of these Talking Industry live on demand on the website, so please look at all the rest of the talks, and if you want to share this one with other people, then please do so. And you can also obviously catch up with the panelists on their stands at a later date as well if you've got questions for them. Thank you.